I started going to Timberlake Camp in 1986 at the age of 8, in between second grade and third grade. Lovely little place up in Shandaken, New York, and one of the best experiences of my life. Made tons of friends who I still have in my life now, a lot of great memories. Um, until the summers of 1993 and 1994, I got kicked out both summers, back to back. That's right. Impressive, I know. Seems almost impossible to do. The first time, 1993, it was for raids, and the second time, 1994, it was for weed. So 25 years later, or so, give or take, I feel like telling the story, or stories, of both summers, and or at least how I remember them. I was a good kid. Let's just get that out there. I was camper captain multiple times, camper of the year, sportsman of the year, at least once each, maybe more. I was in all like the shows and the stuff, and I was just like, I've been there at that point, 8, 9 years, and had respect for my counselors and from my counselors and from my friends and my crew, and like all good stuff. Did not get in trouble much at all, if at all, really. Anyhow, so the summer of 1993, we were the oldest kids in camp. So at that point, like I said, we were, I was well known, and my friends were well known. We've been there for a really long time, and obviously the oldest kids are looked up to in some form or fashion. It was second year dorm. For those of you that maybe haven't been to sleepaway camp, what are raids? Raids are when you leave your bunk after curfew and go out in the world, not in the world, don't leave campgrounds, but out in camp and do something. Usually in our end, it was to go hang out with girls. I know some places raids are like go and mess stuff up. That wasn't really our stilo. We were like, let's go hang out. There was a raid policy at camp. Obviously, it wasn't allowed. Once lights are out and you're in bed, it's time to, go to sleep. So the raid policy, I think it was, if you're caught twice in a summer, you get kicked out of camp. Now, this was not ever enforced. Like, literally never. I can't point to one time that it was, other than the one in question. I'm quite sure even I was caught more than once. I mean, more than twice, or at least twice in other summers with nothing more than a slap on the wrist. I loved raids. And like never ever to like go do damage or mess up the girls' bunks or anything like that, which I think is a version of it. I'm just always down for a good hang. I was then, I am now, I was in college, I was after college. Whenever it's a bunch of people hanging out doing cool stuff, I'm down. And if it happens late at night after everyone is sleeping, with my best friends, plotting the best route, wearing black, and if we made it alive, hanging out with girls. Like, sign me up. It was, and I assume still is, a part of the fabric of sleepaway camp. And should be, in my opinion. It's just fun and bonding, and it's good to disobey the law every once in a while. So and I say we because this was certainly just more than me. I want to say like 8 of us earlier that summer raided the canteen, which is something that is, not usual. But again, I guess we were feeling tough being the oldest kids in camp. We got caught. We had to give back the candy. We got in trouble, missed a day trip somewhere, I believe. And as far as raids go, I'll be fair and say that one was a bigger deal than just the normal raids, because we went like into camp property and whatever. We got in trouble, and just want to put that fact on the table. So the night in question, late in the summer, I want to say 10 days left in camp, maybe 2 weeks, probably closer to 10 days. Again, a long time ago, I was 16. We decided to go out on a raid. A group of us, I don't recall exactly how many or who it was, other than my one friend who I'll get to in a minute. So the overall details, how it all went down, are a little sketchy. But I'm very confident in my memory of my experience that night, at least the latter half, which is what I would deem the relevant part of this first part of the story. So we were out, we saw trouble, and I ended up on the far field on the opposite side of the lake with my friend Eric Russo. So if you don't go to Timber Lake, I assume most of you don't, picture a big long lake, oval shaped, not circular, and on one end is camp, essentially, right? Like the bunks, the girls on one side, guys on the other, the basketball courts, the hockey rinks, the softball field, and it's like basically where camp happens. And then if you walk around the lake to where we were, it's the quote unquote far fields. And this is where like the entrance is if you're like driving up to camp. It's like you basically only go out there if you have an activity like on the schedule on one of those far fields, or to have sex late night in the dugout. Rumor has it. We decide, me and Eric, to be patient and just watch. And you could see across the lake, not details, but you see flashlights, you see people. We see our friends basically being caught, sent back to the bunk. We're there for a while, and it seems that everything, our other friends are now back in bed, and it's clear that the search is now on for us. We see flashlights looking all over the place. Our beds are empty, so they obviously know that we are out and about in the world. We shift a little bit into the more woodsy area of the far fields, so we get some more coverage, some trees and stuff, a little easier to hide. And we start to see flashlight coming our direction. And we just decide again, we're not going to panic, we're not going to run for it, we're just going to lay there silently in the woods, middle of the night, dark, who knows what time it is. And sure enough, the flashlight ultimately, after being super close to us and not seeing us, walks away, starts to leave. They didn't find us. So at some point, we see things have settled down a bit. I have no idea how long this time frame was. And we decide to go for it. And we take the back road back to our bunk, get into bed, take off our clothes, get into bed like any other night, as if nothing ever happened. And at some point within the next 10 minutes, 30 minutes, I have no idea, the camp owner walks through our bunk with a flashlight, sees us in the bed, walks out. The next morning, our group leader tells us that we are wanted down at the boys' HC, the head counselor's office. Grusso and I sit down on the bench outside on the deck. Jay, the owner, is there. He says, and this is so ingrained in my head that what I'm about to say is close to verbatim, 25 years later. Mr. Grusso, we've spoken to your parents, and they're on the way to pick you up. Mr. Heller, your mother is in the Orient, so we are trying to locate your grandparents. My mom was traveling in Asia at the time. And shout out to her, by the way, for enjoying the hell out of the summers I was in camp. One summer Asia, another summer Russia, another summer African safari. Way to set the fucking tone, Mom. Anyway, Jay was basically saying, AKA, you guys are fucking out of here. Stunned. Like, this cannot be true. Kicked out? Are you fucking kidding me? For a raid. For a raid that we didn't even actually get caught on. Sure, we weren't in our bed and they could see that, but like, whose side are you on here, guys? Our friends hear the news, obviously, and come down to the head counselor's office, and they start pleading on our behalf. Like, you're like, this is so beyond comprehension for anyone. Like, the fact that this is happening just doesn't make sense for anyone who knows anything about camp and how things operate and who we were and just everything. I recall even in one of our friends saying simply to Jay, this is Heller and Grusso, come on. But obviously, the mind was already made up. And I think, to be honest, he was pissed that we beat him. He was the type of guy who's always on top of shit, always one step ahead, and this time we got him. and things were already in motion. Of course, it's easy to say, yeah, you really got him, and sure enough, you went home, you didn't get him. Exactly, that's my point. I think that was the thought process. No way these guys are getting me, they're going home. Anyway, things were in motion, as he said. We went up to the bunk, packed up our shit, and left that afternoon. In tears, me at least, I can't speak for Eric. I remember vividly the walk from the bunk to the office to get in the car. My crew was all walking with us, down past the hockey rink, past the head counselor's office, across the grass, across the boys' basketball court where I had done major damage in my day. I even remember my friend's older brother Pete walking with us, getting a ball and like saying me shoot one, and I was crying and I was like, no, like this was not a ceremonious moment here. I did not want to make it a thing like that. Would have drained that shit though, obviously. I mean, come on. So got in the car with Grusso's parents. I went to my grandparents where I slept for a few nights until my mom got back from Asia, and that was that. On to the next summer, 1994. Well, first the off season. Do I want to go back to camp the next summer? I guess I did. I don't remember my thought process there, but I loved the place. These were my friends. This is what I wanted to do for the summer. Was I welcome back? How like it wasn't like this huge bad event happened that made me a pariah at camp or in a fight with the owner or anything like that. Like it was silly and ridiculous that we got sent home in the first place. So I was like, yeah, I'll go back there. Like it's no big thing. So my mom and I went to meet with Jay in his office on Long Island to discuss, and he said I would be welcomed back, and I decided to go. In hindsight, a mistake. At some point in the last 10 to 15 years, I really don't remember when or where exactly, but we were hanging out, a couple friends, and one of my friends who knew me then, knows me now, someone I've seen and spoken to in the last few months, and I don't remember what the topic was, and he wasn't saying this like making fun or at me or anything, but the line came out of his mouth, Chris Heller got kicked out of camp for selling weed to campers. Hold that thought. Back to the story. We get to camp, and we live in this small bunk up in the woods, away from most of the camp and the campers. We were kitchen staff now. We weren't campers any longer. It was 8 of us, and we were kind of in our own little world. The staff, wake up before the camp does, go up to the mess hall, serve food, clean, set up, repeat. We did not enjoy it. I recall having a conversation with a couple of my friends back then, like, should we quit and leave camp? It just wasn't fun. It was our first year not as campers, so maybe just the mind shift, and it was just different. I just didn't enjoy it. The one fun thing I do remember from my time there, my brief time there that summer, was every night when we got back to the bunk, we would smoke weed, get high, and tape ourselves rapping. And like I said, we were left alone, so smoking wasn't even like a thing we were worried about. It's not that we like had to go outside or take precaution that someone was gonna catch us. It was just like part of the normal routine that summer. And anyway, the freestyling was hysterical. Those tapes may even still exist somewhere if I look hard enough. So the takeaway though here is that weed was a big part of our day to day. I had a good friend, Rachel, from my hometown, who was younger and still a camper at that time. We had smoked weed together at home a number of times before, so that topic was completely normal for us. And at some point in the summer, I gave her some weed. A very small amount, like a dime bag or something. And certainly a mistake, not denying that whatsoever, but my friend wanted some weed, so I gave it to her. Anyhow, as most people who smoke weed in a remote location find out quickly, you need more weed. We had days off, I think one each week, where we could leave and do whatever we pleased and go away, go home, whatever you wanted. and two of my bunk kitchen mates, Matt and Eric, had a day off, and on that day, picked up a bunch of weed to bring back to camp. I want to say an ounce. I have no idea really how much. It was like a big bag of weed, but nothing, insane. So they were gone for the day. Another normal day at camp. Late that night, I don't know what time. I remember it being dark, and we were back at the bunk. I don't know if we went out first and then back, or we're just done with work. So it could be 9 o'clock, could be midnight. I don't really know. Matt and Eric returned from their day off. They walk in the bunk, sit down on the bed. Matt pulls out his backpack and opens it and pulls out a big bag of weed. At that moment, both doors of our bunk are kicked open, and in stomps 6 staff members, including Jay, the owner. It was a drug bust. Or rather, a stakeout into a drug bust, because they obviously were waiting for the moment that the weed was revealed to make their move. So they must have been hiding around the bunk, watching and waiting. Now that's a fucking raid. So it's clear they knew this was happening at this moment. How? I still don't know the real answer to that. There were some rumors that there was a rat, not amongst my bunk, but another staff member. I mean, someone had to tell. Otherwise, how would they know that it was happening then and there at that time and be waiting at the bunk? Whatever it is. Not important. They interviewed each one of us, one at a time, and then again the next morning. The end result was I was going home. Matt and Eric, who actually did the transaction and brought the weed into camp, got sent home for a week. Rachel, too, for a week, I believe. And that was that. So this time I deserved to be kicked out of camp. No questions asked. But why me and not the others? Unclear. I feel like I took the fall for the group, which I was 100% happy to do, now and at the time. Like I said, the summer was not fun for me, and it was certainly a very different scene from the year before, where there was tears and devastation, really. This time it was very matter of fact. It was, yeah, I got caught with weed, okay, I'll go home. And pretty black and white. So, back to that line, Chris Heller got kicked out of camp for selling weed to campers. That paints a picture, for sure. But when digging a little deeper, maybe that line isn't actually accurate. What if I didn't sell the weed, I gave it? What if it was to a camper and not campers, plural? And what if that one camper is still one of my closest friends to this day? In fact, I officiated her wedding a year and a half ago. The picture changes a bit, no? If that was the prevailing narrative out in the community, whatever community means in this scenario, and I'm sure it was, knowing how juicy that headline is and the types of people in said community, I'm sure they loved getting their hands on that one. Then that's unfortunate. Chris Heller got kicked out of camp for giving some weed to his friend Rachel and being in the room when a big bag of weed that other people brought into camp was revealed, and he also probably smoked a bunch of weed in his bunk. That's a bit more accurate. Anyhow, those are my stories of my infamous end to an otherwise illustrious camp career. And now I'll end this by singing the Timberlake Camp alma mater.